Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Is Your ICT Infrastructure Fit for the Demands of Digital Transformation? My name is Jackie Jarvis, and I'm the Head of Marketing at Vertel. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know how to participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your computer desktop. You're listening in using your computer's speaker system by default. If you need to adjust the audio settings, please go to the audio menu. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenter via text by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collate and address them during the Q&A session at the end. Lastly, so you don't have to take notes or remember everything our presenter says, we will be providing you with a recording of today's proceedings by early next week at the latest. I would now like to introduce you to today's presenter, Bruce Reid. Bruce is the Head of Service Provider Partnerships at Vertel. He is an industry veteran, having served as Sales and Marketing Director and one of the founding members of Netcom Australia. For the 18 years prior to joining Vertel in 2013, Bruce was based in Europe, and in his capacity as General Manager of Zonic Group, managed global and pan-European PR and marketing programs for IT clients and industry forums that included the MEF, ONF, and MSF. Over to you, Bruce.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you to each of you that have scheduled time in your calendar to join us on this webinar today. I hope you find it informative and productive. One of the most prominent catchphrases in business right now is digital transformation. But what is digital transformation? At a base level, digital transformation is a foundational change in how an organization delivers value to its customers. Contemplating the concept of digital transformation has become a real challenge for CIOs, many of whom view it as nothing more than just a catchphrase that has become confusing at best and meaningless at worst. But as George Westerman, who's a principal research scientist with the MIT Sloan Initiative on the Digital Economy, stated, digital transformation marks a significant rethinking of how an organization uses technology, people, and processes to radically change business performance. As we move into 2019, there are clearly a number of risks ahead for Australian businesses, from the federal elections to the Banking Royal Commission's recommendations, the US-China trade war, and a mixed economic outlook. But it's pressure to keep up with competitors that's leading to restless nights for many executives. KPMG's second annual survey asked business leaders about their major concerns heading into 2019. And as it turns out, digital transformation topped the list. And that's despite a lack of consensus on what it actually means. What CEOs are now moving to adopt is the position that transformation needs to underpin every part of their business. And a genuine transformation is not one that's necessarily led by the IT department. In second position on this year's list, innovation and disruption remained at the front of many business leaders' minds. And that's essentially highlighting concerns around keeping up with new competitors and unfamiliar technologies. In an interesting digression, KPMG stated that it thought the greatest disruptors facing Australian businesses already existed in the form of international behemoths such as Amazon and Alibaba. When these overseas giants move with the determination into our market, they'll be using the data they've accumulated on customers and users overseas to drive better results than their Australian counterpart. This is a very real issue for Australian business leaders. Many companies, however, will view digital transformation as costly and potentially unnecessary process that takes time, investment, and more importantly, commitment. There will be organisations that will cite their lack of IT familiarity with technology and IT systems in particular as a reason for not moving forward. But what is costlier? Upgrading your current processes and knowledge base, or potentially going out of business. The risk of not transforming your business to meet the needs and expectations of your clients can be significant. Many of you will probably be aware of the circumstances that led to the problems that beset the companies I've included in this slide. Capgemini recently tweeted that 87% of companies believe that digital transformation is a competitive opportunity, while a third said it was a matter of survival. So the logical starting point for many organizations will be their wide area network, or WAN, which is the foundation stone of any transformation journey. Some organizations in aged care, for example, are tempted to start by deploying shiny apps and services that hang off the network, as that's what their business peers think about. But this is not necessarily a good starting point. The WAN is your vital business highway, especially for organizations with branches located over several states or internationally. But as many of you are aware, as networks grow in size and become increasingly complex, congestion builds and performance and throughput invariably suffer. Recent studies confirm a growing frustration with current WAN architectures and management systems, and forward-looking organizations are actively evaluating alternative options for fundamental change. As early as 2016, an IDC global survey identified 3 key WAN challenges for Australian organizations. The first is managing connectivity at local branches. Secondly, it's bandwidth demand and the cost of servicing it. And thirdly, it's delivering a consistent user experience across the organization, regardless of location. Let's take a quick look at the factors that are impacting these challenges. Looking back a couple of years, internet traffic was forecast to treble between 2016 and 2023, and is currently well on track to exceed this forecast. Mobile alone will represent in excess of 17% of global internet traffic by 2021, and there'll be at least 31 billion IoT connected devices by 2020, staggering. More importantly, from an enterprise business perspective, branch bandwidth is expected to at least double every 3 years. In other research conducted with CIOs to determine the number of new applications they plan to build and or deploy over the next 12 months, the findings are somewhat surprising, with 16% of the respondents advising that they plan to deploy 100 or more applications. Part of the reason for this high number of new apps is the fact that many enterprises have significant revenue streams generated through e-commerce and online applications, as well as cost-saving opportunities that occur when customers access services online rather than using more costly call centers. At the same time, business-critical applications such as CRM and ERP, as well as collaborative platforms such as Microsoft SharePoint, Lync, and Atlassian's Confluence, are vital to enterprise connectivity. Users, whether employees or customers, expect the applications they interact with will always work and that the data is available on demand. And as every second counts, improving application performance will become paramount in maintaining a competitive edge for many organizations. And what else do we know about the current technology trends in businesses right now? Tech Research Asia recently contacted over 250 ANZ CIOs to determine their highest priorities for their organizations. The 4 key issues in no particular order are, firstly, cloud migration, or should I say the continuation thereof. The fact is that there are still many more workloads outside of the cloud than there are in it. Secondly, data center expansion or migration. Whilst cloud migration is continuing, very few, if any, organizations are adopting a cloud-only approach, and organizations are balancing workloads between public cloud and data center consolidation based on costs and risks. The third issue is modern workplace. Staff are no longer working consistently in branch locations, but from virtually anywhere, be that home, the coffee shop, or the car. Mobility is a significant challenge for organizations of all sizes, and staff, clients, suppliers, etc. expect apps and services to work properly wherever they are located and regardless of the device they are using. And finally, it's overlaying all of this with security. Security's everywhere and it's pervasive, and it's critically important in today's online environment. It's pervasive through the applications, through the WAN, and indeed the entire network. So what is it about today's WAN architecture that's constraining an organization's ability to meet the current and future needs of their employees and customers? Today's WANs, or today's enterprise WANs, are essentially about providing physical connectivity between branches and data centers. What's missing is the capability of seamlessly connecting your business applications with the application users. This is a function currently assigned to the enterprise IT manager, or it's outsourced to MSPs or SIs, and is a complex and time-consuming task, particularly when you take into consideration the number of new applications organizations are planning to deploy based on the research findings I've just shared with you. Despite the migrations from leased lines in the 80s to frame relay and ATM VPNs in the late 90s, to the IP and carrier Ethernet VPNs running over MPLS in the early 2000s, the WAN has been constrained by inflexible routers and switches that are expensive, difficult and time-consuming to maintain, and decrease network responsiveness and agility as your network grows. Each of these migrations also required a forklift upgrade by both the telecoms provider and the enterprise to take advantage of the new features espoused by each generational feature set. Complexity, time-consuming and responsiveness issues related to today's wide area networks are reinforced by a recent IDC survey that identified the 5 biggest IT issues impacting enterprise WAN management. So what is it that needs to change to facilitate an organization's successful digital transformation journey? In 2011, Mark Andreessen, who's a co-founder of Netscape, one of the first browsers, and renowned venture capitalist, penned a very famous memo about why software was eating the world. Over the last few decades, virtualization has transformed ICT, and it's been applied to all areas of it, including operating systems, storage, servers, security, applications, data, and even the desktop. The one significant exception has been the wide area network, or WAN. Despite the WAN technology migrations that I previously mentioned, the network held out for as long as humanly possible. It steadfastly refused to move. In many cases, because network vendors wanted to maintain control of the software layer and determined it was not in their commercial interest to separate the control and the data planes of their expensive and complex routers and switches. The introduction of software-defined networking, or SDN, in around 2010, and the more recent launch of software-defined wide area networking, or SD-WAN, now provides organizations with a network with unsurpassed levels of visibility and control, reliability, and the agility to evolve to suit the business needs of an organization's digital transformation journey and all that it involves. So what is SD-WAN? SD-WAN is a specific application of software-defined networking that's been applied to WAN connections, and it's a virtual or software overlay network running on top of existing internet and VPN connections. SD-WAN will operate over any wide or wireless access, including fiber, HFC, microwave, copper, LTE or Wi-Fi, and unlike previous WAN migrations, an SD-WAN deployment does not require a forklift upgrade of your existing WAN infrastructure. And you can choose to begin by migrating a subset of your sites and then continue rolling it out across your entire network over time. More importantly, SD-WAN now provides organizations with the ability to connect any user with authorized applications, regardless of where that user is located or how they're accessing the network. Dependent on the WAN connections available at each site, IT managers can establish policies that will determine which network link each application will be delivered over based on predefined latency, jitter, and packet loss parameters that are monitored in real time. An SD-WAN will enable you to establish VPN services for each of your branch sites regardless of where they're located, interstate or internationally situated and irrespective of the service provider at each location. New or relocated sites can be added to an enterprise network in less than 10 minutes in any WAN-enabled location. Adding a new branch network site today normally involves sending a technician to site to install and configure the branch router. SD-WAN edge devices can be couriered to site, connected to power and network links by non-technical staff in a similar way you would connect a home broadband modem, for instance, and once authenticated, can be configured automatically from the central controller. Adds, moves and changes on your network, either at a single subset of sites or the entire network, can be provisioned via a web-based management portal in minutes rather than the hours or days that is typically the case today. The same management portal will provide you with real-time visibility of not only the bandwidth utilization at each branch site, but also of each of the applications running across the network at each location, so at last you can make network decisions based on detailed and real-time data points. And WAN connectivity flexibility is assured with the ability to connect any wired or wireless access transport that is a preferred or the only available option on a site-by-site basis. So what are the components that comprise an SD-WAN service? Firstly, there are the SD-WAN edge devices, or CPE, that in most cases can be substituted for existing branch routers. These edge devices perform traffic steering, application classification, QoS, and security policy enforcement. The edge devices are managed by the SD-WAN controller that is ideally located in a secure onshore data center. The SD-WAN controller manages all SD-WAN edge devices in your network. And the final component is the SD-WAN orchestrator or policy engine that manages service orchestration and policy management for traffic routing and QoS over the various WAN connections on your network. The edge devices monitor all of the connected WAN links in real time and route the traffic for each specific application over the WAN link that is compliant with the predetermined application policy. The orchestrator is also the client interface to the management portal that provides visibility and management capabilities of WAN links and application performance stats of all of the sites on your network. With industry analysts forecasting growth of the SD-WAN market of 1.8 billion by 2020 on the conservative side to over 6 billion by 2021 by the more bullish analysts, it's not surprising that there are now a considerable number of vendors jumping onto the SD-WAN product bandwagon. The more advanced solutions will encompass the ability to include both layer 2 and layer 3 services to provide maximum flexibility and options for segmentation and VPNs. It will seamlessly integrate public and private cloud connectivity as just another branch in an enterprise network, and it will include security that is folded into the network with a single point of provisioning and management tied back to network services being delivered to users. And it will incorporate a robust management control plane with built-in redundancy and the ability to be highly scalable and multi-tenanted. In choosing an SD-WAN provider, users should ensure the selected solution is standards-based for future vendor interoperability and supports edge device functionality that includes QoS, NAT, DHCP, firewall, and service chaining, in addition to having an open API to consolidate third-party applications from various vendors. So why should organizations be looking at SDN and SD-WAN solutions as part of their digital transformation strategy? As you can see from this Gartner quote, the rationale is fairly compelling. Virtualization is at last transcending the WAN. Further research findings, once again from Tech Research Asia, reinforce the importance of SDN and SD-WAN to enable you to increase efficiency, lower costs, and build a potential competitive differentiator for your business. And surprisingly, none of the 200+ respondents indicated it was not relevant for them. So in summary, what are the key advantages of an SD-WAN deployment? The numerous advantages can be actually grouped into 4 areas. The first is visibility and control of your network, where each WAN link is monitored in real time and applications routed over the link complying to the pre-set policies assigned to each application. Secondly, it's flexibility and security, enabling you to set up secure tunnels over WAN links from any provider and over any access technology. The third key benefit is the speed and agility associated with being able to bring on new sites in minutes and making real-time changes across your network via your client portal. And the last key and really important benefit is the accumulated lower costs and increased operational efficiencies achieved as a result of the reduced complexity of your network management. SD-WAN will therefore deliver the network you need to ensure your ICT is indeed fit for the demands associated with your digital transformation journey. And with that, I will now open up for questions.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay, now we're going to begin the Q&A session. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane of the control panel. So back to you, Bruce, to field some of those questions.
Thanks, Jackie. Okay, we've had a couple of questions come in during the webinar. So the first one is, what are the security implications of SD-WAN? As I mentioned in the presentation, security is critically important. I've been in this industry for a long time and heard debates and issues around security way back from the days of the early desktop computing. But it's clear with SD-WAN, as we're starting to integrate both public and private networks, security becomes paramount in determining whether you should move forward with an SD-WAN solution or not. The more sophisticated SD-WAN solutions have on the edge devices, they have a stateful firewall built in, but more importantly, they integrate open APIs that let you interconnect and operate with web-based platforms and firewall solutions such as Palo Alto, Checkpoint, etc. And also you've got to have IPsec and you have encrypted tunnels. So an SD-WAN solution properly implemented is a highly secure environment. The next question that's come in, is it preferable to manage SD-WAN in-house or have it delivered as a service? This is the million-dollar question. In the early research around SD-WAN, it was determined that 50% of organizations would do their own implementation and 50% would actually take it as a managed service. As it actually turns out through practice over the last 3 years, there's probably more people taking it as a managed service. And that's a result of the fact that setting up the SD-WAN is a reasonably complex, as an operator that is, or in an enterprise, is a reasonably complex process. Once it's set up and running, it's very easy to use and manage. And businesses have to weigh up whether they want to be in the business of actually managing a network or whether they want to concentrate on their core business. So it's actually the experience has been that people have actually opted more for having it delivered as a service than actually doing their own in-house. Obviously, large enterprises, global organizations are doing their own thing, but most of the major global, and all of the major global telcos are also have SD-WAN as a service offerings. So it's one or the other. The next question is, can I eliminate my MPLS circuits with SD-WAN? Once again, at the outset of the launch of SD-WAN, particularly in the US, where internet circuits were a much lower cost than MPLS, it was actually touted as an MPLS killer. In practice, though, it hasn't turned out that way, particularly in countries like Australia and others where there's very little differentiation between an MPLS circuit and an internet circuit. The cost savings that come with SD-WAN are not necessarily on the on substituting MPLS for an internet connection. What is actually happening is that people are keeping their MPLS links, but they're then supplementing that with lower cost either internet or 4G or NBN connections that give them a lower cost redundancy option. Just one more question popping up now. The last question is, how will SD-WAN save my company money? That's the big question and the important one. As I mentioned earlier, the savings with SD-WAN are really not around the transport itself and the access technology. The real savings come from the efficiencies that you get, the fact that you've got greater visibility and control, the fact that you've got much more flexibility in being able to make adds, moves and changes in a very short period of time, the fact that when you actually want to make upgrades on your network, you do it via customer portal, either on a single or subset or over the entire network, which in the days of the traditional WAN, using the command line interfaces of traditional routers, was a very time consuming and expensive process. Okay, so that looks like it's about the last question.
Okay, I'll just actually give it a couple of seconds more to see if there's any other questions that anyone wants to send in. Please do so now. Don't be shy. Okay, that appears to be it. Thank you very much, Bruce, for that wonderfully informative presentation. And on behalf of Vertel, thank you everyone for attending today's Lunch and Learn webinar. As I mentioned earlier, by early next week, you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to view a recording of today's session. And also be sure to keep an eye out for our next Lunch and Learn webinar. Thank you and goodbye.